In the annals of history, there are stories so grand, so impossible, they sound more like myth than reality. The Battle of Thermopylae is one of them. The story you know is simple. 300 stoic Spartan warriors standing defiant against a tidal wave of 1,000,000 Persian invaders. A glorious, suicidal last stand. But what if I told you that story is wrong? What if this wasn't just a suicide mission? What if it wasn't just about a glorious death? What if, beneath the legend, lies one of the most brilliant and cold-blooded strategic calculations in military history? This is the story of how 300 men, led by a king who knew he was going to die, used a secret tactic to defy an empire and change the course of Western civilization. This is the real story of Thermopylae.
The year is 480 BC. The world is not as you know it. To the east, the Persian Empire, ruled by one man, Xerxes, the King of Kings. His power is absolute. His empire is the largest the world has ever seen. A behemoth stretching from the steppes of India to the shores of Libya. Xerxes is not just a king. He believes he is a living god, and this god has a score to settle. A decade earlier, his father, Darius, had tried to conquer Greece. He was defeated by a handful of Athenians at the Battle of Marathon. For Xerxes, this was an insult that could not stand. The free-thinking, chaotic, and defiant city-states of Greece were a thorn in the side of his absolute order. He would not just defeat them, he would erase them. He assembled an army of, well, the numbers are staggering. The ancient historian Herodotus claimed it was over 5 million souls, including support staff. Modern historians are more conservative, but the consensus remains terrifying. Anywhere from 200,000 to over 1,000,000 soldiers. It was, without question, the largest invasion force ever assembled. He built a canal for his ships. He built a bridge of boats 1 mile long across the Hellespont. It took his army 7 days and 7 nights to cross, marching non-stop. As this wave of conquest rolled south, panic gripped Greece. City-states fell over themselves to surrender, offering Xerxes the symbolic earth and water he demanded. Only a few, led by Athens and Sparta, dared to resist. They were hopelessly outnumbered, divided, and facing annihilation. They needed a plan. They needed a miracle. What they got was a choke point.
The Greek alliance knew they could not defeat the Persians on an open field. To do so would be mass suicide. The Persian army had overwhelming numbers, cavalry that could trample any infantry, and archers that could blot out the sun. The Greeks had one advantage: the hoplite. A hoplite was a heavy infantryman, armored in bronze, carrying a large round shield called a hoplon and a long spear called a dory. They fought in a formation called the phalanx, a tight, interlocking wall of shields and spears. In the open, this formation was slow and vulnerable to being surrounded, but in a confined space, it was a wall of death. The entire Greek strategy depended on finding a place to fight where Persia's numbers meant nothing. They found it at Thermopylae.
The name means the hot gates, named for the hot sulfur springs in the area. It was, at the time, a narrow coastal pass, pressed between the towering cliffs of the Kalydromos Mountains and the lapping waves of the Malian Gulf. In its narrowest section, the pass was perhaps only 50 feet wide. This was the secret tactic. It wasn't a complex maneuver. It wasn't a new technology. The secret tactic was geography. By choosing Thermopylae, the Greeks negated every single Persian advantage. Their cavalry? Useless. The cliffs were too steep. Their overwhelming numbers? A liability. Only a few hundred could fight at a time, forced to funnel directly into the teeth of the Greek phalanx. Their flanking maneuvers? Impossible, with a mountain on one side and the sea on the other. This was the trap. And the bait would be the finest soldiers the world had ever known, the Spartans.
By the way, if you love stories of impossible odds and brilliant strategy like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We dive deep into history's greatest battles every week. Don't miss out.
King Leonidas, one of the two kings of Sparta, was chosen to lead the defense. He was 60 years old, a veteran of a lifetime of brutal training. He famously consulted the oracle at Delphi, who gave him a chilling prophecy. Either Sparta would be destroyed, or a Spartan king must die. Leonidas knew he was not marching to victory. He was marching to his grave. This is why he selected his personal bodyguard of 300 men. But they were not just any soldiers. Every man was a veteran, and in a cold Spartan calculation, every man had a living son to ensure his bloodline would not die out. He brought with him around 7,000 other Greeks, Thespians, Thebans, Phocians, and others. But the backbone of the defense, the immovable object, would be the 300.
When Xerxes arrived, he looked at the tiny, pathetic force blocking his path, and according to legend, he laughed. He sent envoys to demand their surrender. "Lay down your arms," the Persian messenger commanded. Leonidas's reply has echoed for 2,500 years. Molon labe. Come and take them. For 4 days, Xerxes waited, assuming the Greeks would see the size of his army and flee in terror. They did not. On the 5th day, Xerxes, enraged, ordered his first wave to attack, the Medes. The Medes were fierce fighters, but they were lightly armored, carrying wicker shields and short spears. They charged into the narrow pass, and they were slaughtered. They ran headfirst into the Spartan phalanx, a wall of bronze shields, a forest of 9-foot spears. The Spartans, with their superior armor, long spears, and skill in close-quarters combat, stood like a rock. The Medes charged, broke, and died, their bodies piling up in front of the Greek line. Xerxes, watching from a nearby throne, was said to have leaped to his feet 3 times in fury and frustration. He recalled the shattered Medes and sent in his best, the 10,000 immortals. These were his personal bodyguard, the elite of the Persian army. They were called immortals because any man who fell was instantly replaced, giving the illusion they could not be killed. The immortals learned the hard way. They too charged the pass. They too were cut to pieces. The Greeks, fighting in rotation, remained fresh. The Spartans in particular used a devastating tactic. They would feign retreat,
pretending to break and run. The undisciplined Persian troops would roar in triumph and charge after them, breaking their own formation. And then, at Leonidas's signal, the Spartans would turn as one, reform their phalanx, and butcher the disorganized mob. For 2 full days, the greatest army on earth threw itself at 7,000 men in a narrow pass, and they failed. The ground was slick with blood. The piles of dead were used by the Greeks to make their defensive wall even higher. The morale of the Persian army was breaking. Xerxes was desperate.
And then, as happens so often in history, the battle was decided not by courage, but by betrayal. A local man, a Greek named Ephialtes, saw an opportunity for wealth. He went to Xerxes' tent and told him a secret. There was a path, a small hidden goat track that went up and over the mountains and came down behind the Greek position. Xerxes immediately dispatched his immortals, led by Ephialtes under the cover of darkness. The Phocian contingent of the Greek army, tasked with guarding this path, was taken completely by surprise and fled. By dawn on the 3rd day, Leonidas's scouts returned with the terrifying news. The pass was bypassed. The enemy was behind them. The trap was broken. They were surrounded. This was the end. The position was indefensible. Leonidas knew it. He called a council of war. His orders were swift and clear. Almost all of the other Greek contingents were to retreat. They were to fall back, to carry the news, to prepare for the next battle. This fight was over, but he would stay. His 300 Spartans would stay, and in an act of incredible bravery, the 700 Thespians refused to leave their allies. They chose to stay and die with them. A few hundred Thebans, held as quasi-hostages, were also forced to stay. This final decision is the most crucial. Why did Leonidas stay? For glory? Yes, that was part of the Spartan code. But it was far more than that. It was a strategic sacrifice. His stand would buy the retreating Greek army precious time. More importantly, it would buy time for the Greek navy, fighting a simultaneous battle at Artemisium, to disengage and fall back to protect Athens. It would allow Athens itself to be evacuated. And finally, he stayed to forge a legend. He knew that if he retreated, the fragile Greek alliance would shatter. But if he and his men died fighting to the last, their sacrifice would become a rallying cry. It would be the spark that lit a fire of resistance across all of Greece. Xerxes launched his final assault from both front and back. The Spartans and Thespians no longer fought from their narrow wall. They advanced into the open, a final berserk charge to kill as many Persians as they could before they were overwhelmed. Herodotus says they fought with their spears until their spears shattered. They fought with their swords until their swords broke. They fought with their hands and their teeth. Leonidas fell, and a fierce battle was fought over his body. The Greeks driving the Persians back 4 times to retrieve their king. Finally, driven back to a small hillock, the last of the defenders were surrounded. Xerxes, taking no more chances, ordered his archers to fire. The sky turned black, and the last of the 300 Spartans,
and their 700 Thespian brothers-in-arms fell. Leonidas and his men were all killed. The pass was taken. Xerxes' army marched south and burned Athens to the ground. By any measure, the Battle of Thermopylae was a tactical defeat. But what part of this legend inspires you the most? Was it Leonidas's cold calculation, the bravery of the 300, or the incredible loyalty of the 700 Thespians who chose to stay? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. But the war was far from over. As Leonidas had calculated, the Greek navy, escaping from Artemisium, lured the Persian fleet into a trap at the Battle of Salamis and annihilated it. Xerxes, his supply line cut, fled back to Persia. His remaining army was defeated the following year at the Battle of Plataea by a unified Greek army led, fittingly, by Spartans. The 300 did not save Greece at Thermopylae. They saved Greece because of Thermopylae. Their sacrifice became the legend that united a nation, that inspired free men to fight for their homes, and that ultimately preserved the very idea of democracy, an idea that would shape the world we live in today.